The freeloading ends today. That's what my husband said to me. Not yelling, not angry, just calm, like he was announcing a policy change at work. We were standing in our kitchen. 6 years of marriage. 6 years of building a life together. And he reduced all of it to one word: freeloader. I was drying a plate when he said it. I didn't drop it. I didn't cry. I simply placed it on the rack and turned to face him. I got promoted, he added, like that made it okay. Luke wanted separate finances. He wanted to split everything 50-50. He said he wasn't going to carry someone who wasn't pulling their weight. I watched him standing there in his expensive new suit, his polished shoes, his confidence, and I said one word. Okay, he blinked. He'd been ready for a fight. He wasn't ready for agreement. What Luke didn't know was that I'd been keeping track, every dollar, every hour, every invisible thing I'd done while he climbed. He thought separate money meant freedom. I knew it meant exposure. 3 weeks from now, he'd beg me to take it back, but I wasn't going to let him. If you've ever felt invisible in your own home, you'll understand this story. And if you stay until the end, hit that subscribe button. Let me take you back. Luke and I met in college. We graduated together. We started our careers together. I became a teacher at a private school. He went into corporate sales. People looked at his job and thought he was the breadwinner. They looked at mine and thought I was comfortable. They had no idea. While Luke worked 9 to 5, I built something else. Every evening, every weekend. I ran a private tutoring business. Wealthy families paid me $200 an hour to prepare their kids for college. Business owners hired me to coach their teenagers into elite schools. Some of my clients paid more for one session than Luke spent on a nice dinner, and every dollar went into our joint account. Quietly, no announcements, no applause, but I didn't just bring in money, I ran our life. I paid the bills, I tracked subscriptions. I scheduled doctor appointments. I handled repairs when something broke. I made sure groceries appeared in the refrigerator and clean clothes appeared in the closet. I remembered his mother's birthday every single year. Luke forgot every time. He thought those things just happened. They didn't. They happened because I made them happen. I kept records of everything. Bank statements, receipts, time logs, not because I was planning this, because I'm thorough. And then there was Patricia, Luke's mother. She loved her son, but she didn't love the idea of him needing anyone. For months, she'd been whispering in his ear. You work so hard, you deserve to enjoy what you earn. You shouldn't have to support another adult. She never said my name. She never raised her voice. She just planted seeds. And Luke watered them until they grew into something ugly. When he got his promotion, Patricia called it his moment. Now you can finally take control of your life, she told him. Control. That was the word that stuck. By the time Luke stood in our kitchen and called me a freeloader, he actually believed he was doing something brave. He had no idea he was standing on the very person who'd been holding him up. Luke laid out his plan like it was a business proposal. We need financial independence, he said. My money should be my money, your money should be yours, we split expenses, we keep things fair. Fair, that word again. What do you mean? I asked. I mean we separate our finances, we each pay our own way, 50-50. His eyes were fixed on mine, waiting for the reaction he'd rehearsed against. He'd practiced this. I could tell. He'd turned it over in his head until it sounded reasonable. You've been living off my income long enough, he continued. I'm not going to carry someone who isn't pulling their weight. There it was, the accusation his mother had been building for months. I could have argued. I could have pulled out my records right then and shown him the truth. But I didn't. Instead, I nodded. Okay, I said. Luke stopped mid-breath. Okay, he repeated. Yes, separate accounts. We split everything 50-50. That's what you want, right? He searched my face for anger, for tears, for guilt. He found none. Exactly, he said, and relief washed over him. We'll go to the bank this week, I continued. We'll open separate accounts, we'll divide the balance, and we'll track every expense going forward. Luke smiled. He thought I was surrendering. He thought he'd won. What he didn't understand was that I'd just agreed to the most expensive lesson of his life. Perfect, he said. I'm glad you're being reasonable about this. Reasonable? I turned back to the dishes. Luke had no idea what reasonable actually looked like. But he was about to find out. 2 days later, we sat side by side at the bank. The building was quiet, polished, the kind of place designed to make money feel safe. A woman named Jennifer greeted us. She had the calm voice of someone who'd seen a lot of couples in moments like this. "So you'd like to separate your joint account into 2 individual accounts?" she asked. "Yes," Luke answered immediately. I just nodded. Jennifer typed for a moment, then looked up. "How would you like to divide the current balance?" Luke turned toward me. He expected me to hesitate, to suggest something generous, to step back the way I always had. "Half," I said. Luke froze. "Half," he repeated. 50-50, I said evenly. "That's what fair means." There was a brief silence. Jennifer waited, her hands poised over the keyboard. Luke glanced at the screen like the numbers might change if he stared long enough. "Fine," he said. Papers were printed, forms were signed. Our shared account was about to become history. When we left the bank, Luke was unusually quiet. That evening, I brought up the logistics. "We should track household expenses," I said. "Track them?" Luke asked. "A shared spreadsheet, every grocery run, every household item, every bill. We record it and settle at the end of the month." Luke hesitated. This wasn't the kind of independence he'd imagined, but he nodded. I created the file right there. Date, item, cost, who paid. I shared it with Luke. "A fresh start," I said. Luke tried to smile, but something in his expression had shifted. For the first time, he was beginning to sense that what he'd started wasn't a victory. It was a test, and he had no idea how badly he was going to fail it. The changes began immediately. I didn't announce them. I just stopped doing what I'd always done. On the first night, I cooked dinner for myself. I left Luke a note that said there was pasta in the pot if he wanted some. Luke stood in the kitchen staring at the counter in confusion. He was used to plates appearing in front of him, used to meals being warm and ready. He served himself awkwardly. He couldn't find the sauce. He reheated pasta that had already gone cold. The next morning, I made coffee only for myself. Luke poured instant coffee into his mug and frowned at the bitter taste. Groceries were another shock. I bought what I needed: vegetables, simple meals, healthy portions. Luke went shopping on his own and came back with frozen dinners and random items that didn't go together. By the end of the week, he'd spent more on food than I had all month. The spreadsheet filled quickly. Paper towels, soap, cleaning supplies, snacks, bottled drinks. Luke had never noticed how many small things kept a home running. Now he was paying for all of them. He also had to clean. When he tried to wash clothes, he mixed everything together. White shirts turned gray. He stared at the washing machine like it had personally betrayed him. "I've seen you separate the colors before," he said. "I just never thought about why." I didn't smile. "I've been doing it for 6 years," I replied. 3 weeks after the bank visit, Luke reminded me that his sister was coming for dinner. Lydia and her husband were driving in from the suburbs on Sunday afternoon. They always ate at 5. They always expected a proper meal. "You know how Lydia likes things," Luke said. "Dinner needs to be ready on time." I didn't look up from my laptop. "I'm not cooking." Luke stared at me. "What do you mean you're not cooking? Your guests, your money, your responsibility." "This is ridiculous," Luke said, his voice rising slightly. "You've always cooked before. Now we have separate finances," I said calmly. Luke went to the store that evening. He was gone for hours. When he came back, he looked exhausted. The bags were filled with random food: cold cuts, bread, a pie that was already dented on one side. "How did you do this every week?" he asked quietly. I just shrugged. On Sunday at 5, Lydia walked in and immediately wrinkled her nose. "Where's the roast?" she asked. "I don't smell anything cooking." "We're doing something simple," Luke said. Lydia's eyes swept across the table. "Plastic containers, store-bought bread, no hot food." "What is this?" she demanded. I was sitting in the living room reading. Luke swallowed hard. "Megan and I have separate finances now. She's not cooking anymore." Lydia turned slowly toward me, then back to Luke. "What happened?" Luke explained everything. The promotion, the freeloading comment, the 50-50 split. When he finished, Lydia laughed. Not kindly. "You and Mum told the woman who runs your entire life that she was a burden?" Luke stayed silent. "That's insane," Lydia said flatly. "David, we're leaving." She walked over and leaned down to kiss me on the cheek. "You deserve better," she whispered. Then she walked out, her husband following without a word. Luke stood in the middle of the room, staring at the food he couldn't even prepare properly. Over the next 2 weeks, Luke tried to negotiate. "This is exhausting," he said one night. "Can't we just go back to how things were?" "You called that freeloading," I replied. "I didn't mean it like that. You said it in front of me in our home after 6 years." He had no answer for that. Patricia called me directly a few days later. "Megan, I think there's been a misunderstanding," she said, her voice dripping with concern. "Luke didn't mean it the way it sounded. He's just under a lot of stress." "He said what he said," I replied, and I agreed to what he wanted. "But surely you can? Patricia, if you'd like to cook for him, you're welcome to. Otherwise, this is between Luke and me." She hung up without another word. Luke came home late that week, ordering takeaway he couldn't afford, falling behind on chores he'd never learned to do properly. Our lease renewal was coming up in 60 days. If we couldn't agree on terms, one of us would have to leave. The pressure was building, and Luke was cracking. One evening, I brought out a folder. I placed it on the table between us. "Everything's in here," I said. 6 years of numbers. Luke stared at the folder but didn't open it. I did. "My income," I began, "teaching and tutoring combined, just over 190,000. Luke's eyes widened slightly. "Housing," I continued. "Rent, utilities, internet, the portion I paid beyond our agreed half, over 48,000. His mouth opened slightly. "Food, groceries, household supplies, gifts for your family, holidays, birthdays, over 32,000. I paused deliberately. "Including your golf membership." Luke stared at the pages like they were written in a foreign language. "I thought those things just happened," he whispered. "They happened because I paid for them," I said. I turned to the final section. 15 hours a week of cooking and cleaning. 10 hours of managing schedules, appointments, and family events. If I charged even a modest professional rate for household management, it would total another 75,000. The room went completely silent. Luke looked smaller now, his shoulders sagging. "I didn't know," he said quietly. "You didn't look," I replied. He rubbed his face with both hands. "What do you want from me?" I closed the folder carefully. "I want to be seen." Luke sat there for a long time, saying nothing. For the first time since this began, he understood. The woman he'd called a freeloader had been carrying his life on her back, and that weight was finally crushing him instead. That night, Luke's phone rang. It was his father, Richard. Luke hesitated, then put it on speaker. "I heard everything," Richard said without preamble. "Lydia told me." Luke didn't speak. "You remember who planned every birthday, every holiday, every family visit?" Silence. "It was Megan," Richard said, his voice steady and firm. "She made this family work." "Not you, not your mother, her." Luke swallowed hard. "You lived comfortably because your wife paid with her time and her money, and you called that freeloading." "I didn't mean to hurt her," Luke said quietly. "Intent doesn't erase damage," Richard replied. "You took without seeing." "That's worse than taking deliberately." Richard paused, letting the words settle. "If you want to keep this marriage, you need to learn to value what you have before it's gone, and you need to do it now." The call ended. Luke sat on the couch, staring at the dark screen of his phone. For the first time, he wasn't angry. He was ashamed. The next morning, Luke asked to talk. We sat at the kitchen table, the same place where it all started. "I need to understand something," I said. "Why did you really do this?" Luke looked down at his hands. "Mum kept saying I was working too hard, that I deserved to enjoy my own money. And you believed her? I thought she was looking out for me." I leaned back in my chair. "Your mother didn't want you to be independent, Luke. She wanted control." He looked up sharply. "When I contributed financially and managed our household, it threatened her," I continued. "She couldn't position herself as the only woman who took care of you. So she convinced you I was taking advantage." Luke's jaw tightened. "She told me I was being used, and you didn't question it. You didn't look at a single statement. You didn't ask what I actually contributed." "I trusted her," Luke said. "You trusted her more than you trusted me." That landed like a physical blow. Luke sat in silence for a long time, his breathing shallow. "I wasn't trying to hurt you," he finally said. "I thought I was standing up for myself." You were standing on me, I replied. He nodded slowly, understanding washing over his face. What do I do now? I looked at him carefully. You learn to carry your own life, then we'll talk about sharing one. Luke didn't argue this time. For the first time, he was truly listening. I'll do whatever it takes, he said. Good, I replied. Because I'm not interested in going back to how things were. If we stay together, it has to be different. How? I pulled out a sheet of paper I'd prepared the night before. These are my terms: 6 months of separate finances, equal household labor tracked weekly, therapy, individual and couples, and a signed acknowledgement of what you failed to see. Luke read the list slowly, his eyes moving down each line. This is fair, he said quietly. It's more than fair, I replied. It's the foundation you should have built 6 years ago. He picked up a pen, and he signed. That letter sat on our refrigerator for 6 months, a daily reminder. Not of revenge, of respect. The first month was hard. Luke had to learn things he'd never thought about before. How to plan meals for a week, how to clean a bathroom properly, how to track expenses without forgetting half of them. He made mistakes. He burned food. He bought the wrong cleaning products. He forgot to pay a bill and we got a late notice. But he didn't quit. Every week, we sat down together and reviewed the spreadsheet. At first, his expenses were double mine. By month 2, they were closer. By month 3, they were equal. He started asking questions. How did you know which vegetables last the longest? Why do you separate colors and whites in the wash? How do you remember all the subscription due dates? I answered every single one, not because I had to, because he was finally trying to learn. We started therapy in month 2, individual sessions first, then couples. In one session, the therapist asked Luke a simple question. What did you think your wife did all day? Luke sat there for a long time, his face pale. I thought she taught, and then came home, and I don't know, I thought life just happened around us. The therapist turned to me. How does that make you feel? Invisible, I said. Luke's head snapped toward me, his eyes suddenly wet. I'm sorry, he said, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry. It wasn't the first time he'd apologized, but it was the first time I believed him. By month 4, something shifted. Luke stopped asking me how to do things and started figuring them out himself. He built routines. He set reminders on his phone. He planned ahead instead of reacting. One evening, I came home to a clean apartment and dinner cooking on the stove. You cooked? I asked, genuinely surprised. I watched 3 videos on how to make this properly, he said. It's not perfect, but it's edible. I tasted it. It was actually good. You're learning, I said. He smiled, a real smile, not relief, not guilt, pride. For the first time in 6 months, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. 6 months passed. Luke asked if we could host a family dinner. I want to do it right this time, he said. I want to show them. I agreed. He spent 2 days preparing. He planned the menu carefully. He shopped for ingredients. He prepped everything the night before. On Sunday, Lydia and Richard arrived together. Patricia came too, though she looked uncertain. The table was set beautifully. The food smelled incredible. Lydia raised her eyebrows when she walked in. This is new, she said carefully. Luke pulled out chairs for everyone with quiet confidence. We ate. The food was genuinely good, really good. Halfway through the meal, Luke stood up. I need to say something, he said. The table went quiet. Luke turned toward me. 6 months ago, I stood in our kitchen and called my wife a freeloader. Patricia shifted uncomfortably in her seat. I was wrong, Luke continued, his voice steady. I didn't see her. I didn't value her. I thought my paycheck was the only thing that mattered. He looked around the table at each person. Megan contributed over $300,000 to our life over 6 years, cash and labor combined. Lydia's eyes widened. She paid for things I didn't even notice existed. She managed things I didn't even know needed managing. Richard nodded slowly, his expression approving. I was blind, Luke said, and I hurt the person who was holding everything together. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded paper. This is a new joint account agreement. Equal transparency, equal access, monthly finance meetings where we both review contributions together. He placed it on the table in front of me. I'm not asking you to go back to the way things were, he said, meeting my eyes. I'm asking if we can build something better. I looked at the paper for a long moment, then I looked at him. On one condition, I said, anything, you never stop seeing me. I won't, he said. I promise you that. I picked up the pen, and I signed. Lydia exhaled audibly, relief flooding her face. Richard smiled, genuine warmth in his expression. Patricia cleared her throat softly. Megan, she said, her voice quieter than I'd ever heard it, I owe you an apology. I turned to face her. I judged you without knowing anything about what you did. I made assumptions. I influenced my son in ways I shouldn't have. Her voice cracked slightly. I was wrong, and I'm genuinely sorry. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic, but it was real. Thank you for saying that, I replied. Patricia nodded, her eyes glistening. The rest of the dinner was lighter. We talked about Luke's new routines, about the meals he'd learned to cook, about the therapy sessions that had helped us both grow. Lydia leaned over at one point and whispered to me, I'm proud of you for not giving up and for not letting him off easy. I smiled. I wasn't trying to punish him, I said. I was trying to teach him. Well, she said, squeezing my hand, it worked. By the time everyone left, the kitchen was already clean. Luke and I washed the remaining dishes side by side. Equal rhythm, equal effort. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For giving me a chance to be better. I handed him a plate to dry. Don't thank me yet, I said. This is just the beginning. He smiled. I know. And for the first time in a long time, I believed we were going to be okay. A few weeks later, Luke got a call. Another promotion. He came home and told me immediately. They want me to take a senior management position, he said. It's a significant step up. More money, more responsibility. What did you say? I asked. I told them I needed to talk to you first. That was new. We sat down that evening and went through the details together. More travel, longer hours, higher stress. Do you want it? I asked. He thought for a moment, really considering. I want it if it doesn't cost us, he said. If it means going back to how things were before, I don't. I looked at him carefully. We can hire help, I said. We can adjust schedules. We can share the load. You're sure? I was never against your ambition, Luke. I was against being invisible. He nodded, understanding completely now. Then let's do it, he said. Together. He took the job, but this time, things were different. We hired a cleaning service that came twice a week. We used a meal preparation service for busy nights when neither of us had time. We split the remaining chores evenly and tracked them on a shared app. It wasn't perfect, but it was partnership. I expanded my tutoring business during this time. I hired an assistant, then 2 more. Within a year, I turned it into a small educational consultancy. Luke helped me set up the business structure. He reviewed contracts with me. He celebrated every milestone. He didn't overshadow. He supported. Patricia sent flowers one afternoon. The card said simply, I see you now. Thank you for not giving up on him. I kept the card. Not because I needed her approval, because it marked the shift in our family. One evening months later, I was working at my desk when Luke walked in quietly. I was thinking, he said, about how close I came to losing you. I looked up from my laptop. If you hadn't agreed that day, he continued, if you'd fought me or left me immediately, I never would have learned any of this. I didn't do it to teach you a lesson, I said. I did it because I was tired of being taken for granted. I know, he said, sitting down across from me, but you could have walked away, and you didn't. I thought about it, I admitted. He leaned forward. Why didn't you? I closed my laptop carefully. Because I loved you, and I believed you could be better. Was I worth it? He asked quietly, vulnerability clear in his voice. I thought about the last year and a half. The work, the pain, the slow rebuilding of trust. Ask me again in 10 years, I said. He laughed softly. Nearly 2 years after that kitchen conversation, we stood in the same spot one morning. Luke was making coffee. I was reading the news on my tablet. He poured 2 cups, equal amounts. He handed me one, our fingers touching briefly. I love you, he said. I love you too. It wasn't cinematic. It wasn't dramatic, but it was real, and it was ours. Some stories end with someone walking away. This one ended with two people learning to finally see each other. Because partnership isn't about who earns more, it's about who shows up. If this story resonated with you, I'd like to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment. Would you have stayed and rebuilt or walked away? There's no wrong answer. And if you made it this far, I'd be grateful if you subscribed. This has been a fictionalized dramatization and is not legal or financial advice. The freeloading ended, and the partnership finally began.